Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ven, and I welcome you to the M.O.C Spotlight, where we take apart what you build. For today's episode, we'll be going over Skull Blazer, created by IGU and found on flickR. And no, unfortunately, this is not an official member of the Skull Squad that we have come to know and love in Bionicle, but that's just fine. We'll figure out something to know and love about this guy. Now before we get into that though, let me tell you about my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the M.O.C, the build of the M.O.C itself, and the concept and ideas behind the M.O.C's creation. Each quality will mount up to 5 points, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the end of the episode, and please remember that this is all based on my opinion. So let's get this rockin'. Now there are a lot of cool features on this M.O.C, but what really grabbed my attention at first was this big ballistic cannon thing with a unique ammo belt, and then this rockin' mohawk that for such a small feature adds a lot of character and personality to the M.O.C. And I think it goes pretty well with this flaming hot aesthetic that the M.O.C has going on. And by that I'm referring to some of the flames that are on the M.O.C's torso, like the ones sticking out of the shoulders, and the tinier flames adding a bit more detail to the lower half of the torso. This, complemented by the consistent transparent orange that is laid out in the rest of the M.O.C, all does a pretty good job of conveying this blazing, hot, fiery goodness. It really looks like the M.O.C is about to bring the heat, but not too much heat, because it's pretty well contained. And the rest of the M.O.C is mostly filled up with silvers and grays, blacks, and gunmetals. Well, mostly silvers. And as much as I typically don't really like silver, I actually think it doesn't look so bad on this M.O.C. I think it works really well. And it fits the Skull villain character archetype anyway. I mean, just look at all of them, they're all silver. But this guy just comes off as much more interesting. I mean, there's a lot of small details that actually make the M.O.C a lot more interesting, but at the same time, it's not overbearing, because for the most part, this M.O.C kind of has a bit of a smooth, more conservative feel to it, but also not to a point where the M.O.C just ends up looking so basic and just simple and boring. No, if anything, this M.O.C looks exciting. It's a humanoid design with a few deviations in the legs, this bright and vibrant color scheme, and just overall, it's a really cool looking silhouette. And my gosh, that mohawk looks just glamorously perfect. And if I had to make any complaints about this M.O.C's appearance, it would be that I kinda think that the knees are a little odd. I mean, they're fists. The dude has fists for kneecaps. And I'm also not sure if these should be transparent orange either, because that makes it seem a bit exposed. Maybe if there's a silver part attached to the top of it, or if the bone piece in the thigh was transparent orange instead, then that would look a bit better. Because as the rest of this M.O.C goes, it kind of seems as though the transparent orange represents like the internal mechanisms of the M.O.C, like all the heat is kept inside, and it's just slowly but surely being churned out into this rockin' warrior power. Speaking of internal, another thing that kinda bugs me just a little bit, cause on the other hand I actually kinda like how it looks, is this rib cage. Cause as you'll notice, the lower ribs are the exact same length as the upper ribs, and since I'm sure all of you know how ribs actually look like, this is a bit odd, especially since the Skull villains even have accurate rib cages. Then you'd think, you know, why not just use that? But on the other hand, you know, the one that likes it, I appreciate the custom design because it does add a bit more detail, and I feel like the usage of the already existing rib cage piece would probably look a little bit boring, at least compared to this. One last thing, and it might be a little bit of a nitpick, but I think his shoulder armor over here kind of blocks his face a little bit too much. It'd be nice if these were spread apart a little more so that he doesn't like hit himself from turning his cheek. Aside from that, I got nothing else to really complain about. I actually really like how this M.O.C looks. Now in terms of the build, I gotta say, this M.O.C holds up really well. Quite literally. It looks capable of taking on a whole bunch of different poses while still managing to hold itself up properly. Plus, look at all this articulation. I mean, it is fairly basic for the most part, but these legs, the way that these are articulated just impresses me, considering the way that they're built. And I also noticed that in both the arms and the legs that the builder utilized these friction pieces. And the best part about it is that they actually go with the color scheme, and they're so seamless. Man, I gotta say, more than half of this MOC is just creatively built. I mean, this is just a really neat usage of parts, and they all work really well together aesthetically. But what really impresses me is that even with the little intricacies of this MOC's construction, it still comes off looking really clean, with like nothing awkward sticking out or no parts just looking really loose or anything like that. This is just really well done, and I am a big fan of the head and the way that this chain ammo thingy turned out looking. Those just are hands down my favorite parts about this MOC, both in appearance and in build. And one last thing to note is that this MOC appears to actually have a function. And it may not be the craziest or most innovative feature out there, but it is the implementation of the stud launcher. And judging from some of these pictures, it appears to be quite functional, which is pretty awesome because then it really fits with the whole Bionicle 2015 ideology. And I have absolutely nothing much else to say about the build. It turned out really good, so let's start talking about the concepts. Now, I haven't been able to find a description of this MOC, so I can't really tell what the big idea is. Well, I mean, I guess I can make a couple of guesses. As I was alluding to earlier, this guy looks like he could be a part of the Skull Squad from Bionicle's 2015 villain roster, because he pretty much meets the quota. He's got the skull mask, the skull rib cage in transparent colors, the transparent colors being present all over the place, these bone femur-esque pieces being used on the arms and legs, the printing on the chest armor piece, the gimmicky stud launcher that was more than likely inspired by concept art for the Skull villains. And now I think this is the most important thing to keep in mind while looking at this MOC, because honestly, it looks as though this is a reimagining of said concept art. Like, what if this Skull villain actually became a thing and had a whole lot of character to it, expressed simply in its design? Because you can see it does take a couple of hints, like of course the gun, then there's the color scheme, and maybe like 2 or 3 parts. And you know, assuming this is the case, I'd say, good job. Very well done to you, sir. This turned out looking just amazingly, and I honestly can't find too many flaws that I personally have with it. Oh, wait a minute. I think I just found something. What are these? These small gold studs on the feet, what is that? With all that said, let's move on to the final scores. So in terms of appearance, this MOC receives 4.5 out of 5. This MOC looks rockin' awesome. I like it a lot. I like its design quite a lot. I really don't have much to critique or complain about, and I did make a few nitpicks, but they are so minor that they don't even bug me in the end. But I do acknowledge that they may bug some of you guys, or, well, anybody else really. Like, I could definitely see some people agreeing that the whole collar, shoulder armor thing is a bit of a problem. But aside from little things like that, overall the MOC turned out looking great. As for the MOC's build, gotta give it a 5 out of 5. I really don't have any problems with this build. I think this is a really creative and neat usage of parts. A pretty well thought out selection, if I do say. And the amount of posability is outrageously great. And as for the concept, gotta give it a 5 out of 5. Simply because I think I understand the goals behind the creation of this MOC, and I think they were very well achieved. The MOC looks awesome and creative and really well characterized, and the build holds up really well. I mean, it looks like the dude just took this one piece of concept art and not only made it a reality, but he made it so much more interesting in its design. He took some really cool liberties with it. And on that note, we are left with the final score, which adds up to a 14.5 out of 5. Probably one of the highest scores we've seen yet, if not the highest score we've seen yet. I honestly don't remember. But regardless, this is an awesome MOC. Turned out really clean. I just personally, I really like it, and I have like little to no gripes with it, but I do acknowledge some minor flaws, So great job, IGU. I sincerely hope to see more out of you. And I do expect to see some out of you viewers, especially if you're participating in the video game challenge. If you are viewing this video on Vessel Early Access, then you guys got about just under about a week to get your mocks up and going. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then by this point, the challenge has ended. Contest is over. You will be seeing results in the coming future. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then please refer to the message boards. That is board.ttvpodcast.com. Look under the LEGO Creations category and you will find information about the video game challenge that I had proposed a few weeks ago. Be sure to enter if you feel confident enough. Post your creations. And heck, if you don't feel like entering the challenge, post your creations there anyway, because I check that message board all the time in search of creations to throw up on future spotlights. And if you decide to not do any of that, well, thank you for watching anyway. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.